Hey there, and welcome to the Choose to Think Inspirational podcast. My name is Victoria Blyden, and I am so grateful that you're here. A couple of weeks ago, I put out an episode called Off Script, and that's where I basically was sharing my heart about, in part, the podcast series that we've just completed on Your Mind is a Garden, and also just to share transparently how that particular episode, one of them, that series actually impacted me. And I wanted to just be upfront and honest and frank about that. Over the last couple of months, really, goodness, my episodes have been really open and transparent, and I've been a little shocked at the responses that I'm getting. I'm having people email and write in and text me saying how valuable those particular episodes are, and it makes me think, okay, you just want transparency. You want something real and authentic, because in this day and age, it's hard to know what is real, right? So I'm grateful for that kind of feedback. And it also lets me know that maybe more of that would be very welcome. Today, I'm going to share with you a little bit about what happened on Jim and I took a mini vacation, a little weekend away. It was supposed to be all about rest. And matter of fact, I mentioned that a couple of weeks ago. I said, hey, I had two really good friends who said, Victoria, you just need to rest in your life. And you need to get away a little bit, just breathe, because, we lost my dad in October, and I was going through some other deeply personal issues, friendship shifts that are shifts that are occurring within a friendship that I am really grieving also. So it was grief upon grief and how to navigate all that. And they suggested, my two dear friends said, Victoria, just get away. So from there, I planned a little birthday getaway for Jim, and we just got back on Sunday, this past Sunday. But I want to tell you about that. And I want you to stay tuned, because at the very end, we're going to talk about a shift in perspective where you learn to ask yourself over and again, is this a tragedy or is this an inconvenience? I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we go, but I had such high hopes for this particular little mini getaway, this rest. I was thinking, yes, I'm going to rest. I'm going to rest, and it's going to be wonderful. And it was wonderful. It was quasi-restful or peaceful, but there was a lot into it that I had not anticipated. I had my expectations so high about this trip and this getaway, knowing that it was something I needed. I'm looking at my phone because I jotted down notes of everything that was happening up to this, and it's going to be a big story, and it's kind of funny, kind of serious, kind of sad, kind of alarming, all of that all at once. So I want you to stay tuned and even listen to that. But at the end of the episode, I want to share some application with you. And again, this is totally off script. I just have reminders on my phone to help me remember things that actually happened. So the very first thing, raise your hand if you're a dog owner, a pet owner. We love our pets. We love our dogs. And we were set to leave on a Friday. And on Thursday, we had the dogs groomed. We have two dogs, Rico and Smokey. We had them groomed because they were going to have a weekend at Nana's, right? Jim's mom was going to watch our dogs for us. For whatever reason, I had bought, while I was at the groomers, I bought these two long chew treats, these big long sticks. Matter of fact, they were called churros, like a churro, there's the Spanish word. It's a big pastry. And so they were in that shape. And they were not like cowhide or anything like that, but they were made of just food products, consumable products. And so I broke off a little piece to give to Rico and a slightly larger piece after they got home, piece to give to Smokey, just because we always give them treats after they have their grooming session. Or when I do anything with them, like if I give Rico a bath at home, whatever, it's always they get a treat after. And so I was doing that, and everything was well and good, except Smokey got onto the cabinet after I left that room, and he grabbed the rest of the stick, which was substantial, and he proceeded to devour the whole thing, unbeknownst to us. It's like gone, right? So later that day, he was sick. He was like doing the weirdest things, no doubt. I mean, we could hear the grumbling in his belly. He wouldn't eat. He still would keep drinking, but he would just like walk into a room and be catatonic. He would just like be so still. And his eyes looked so sad. At first, Jim thought, okay, they know something's up and that we're going to leave and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, so that was very alarming to us because you need to know about Smokey. He's been given to seizures, and he's an older dog. I think he's like 9 years old. And we've actually successfully dealt with his seizures. We kind of pinpointed that they were anxiety driven. I think Rico was driving him nuts because Rico is that little teeny yappy dog and just would pull on his fur and do all kinds of things with Smokey and trying to maintain dominance, I guess. I don't know, but that's another story. But we've been through seasons of episodes with Smokey, and so we were a little fearful and a little like, oh no, what's going on? Is this going to happen? So this is kind of the way we were leading up into this trip. We were supposed to take the dogs to Jim's mom's on that Thursday night, but we thought maybe we better keep them at home. So already the next day was going to be slightly different than what we had planned. And if you know me, you know I'm a planner. I love to plan things. I am like checklist, ABCD. We're going to follow that list. And I know it's a control thing, probably their security or comfort and all of that for me. But anyway, I'm driven in that way. And I knew that was going to be a kink in our plans. Plus I was very sad about it and a little bit concerned about our dog. Do we take him to the vet? How do we handle this situation? Hopefully, we thought, Lord, let him be better tomorrow. I prayed seriously over my little creature. Also, I need to tell you that we had planned to take my car, Hank the Cow Car Honda. That's what I call my car, Hank the Cow Car Honda. If you've ever read Hank the Cow Dog, there's just a little humor in all of that. But my car is 9 years old. Jim's car is like 14 years old, I think. And no, 12 years old. And so we decided to take my car. I needed an oil change, which I was determined to have done. So on the way, this was a particularly hot day in Kentucky last Wednesday, a couple days before we were set to leave, that I was going to have the oil change. And I was driving to Frankfurt. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so hot in here. But I run cold. I had a sweatshirt on and a t-shirt and all that. But I couldn't get the cold air to come out. So we discovered, of course, that the AC was completely out in that car. But at the dealership where we went, they assured us, oh, we can get the parts tomorrow and get that taken care of for you. So we were like, okay, let's do this. Had that taken care of. However, the next day, this was also Thursday when Smokey, started getting so droopy, that they called and said, we're not going to get that ready for you. It won't be ready until 10 a.m. tomorrow. I'll get my mechanic on it first thing because there was one part they hadn't anticipated replacing that they needed to replace. Okay. So then we had a dilemma. Do we leave really later into the day or do we just wait and see if they possibly can get it finished earlier? We have to hightail it to Frankfurt, then get the dogs over to Jim's mom because we're just down to the one car, right? How are we going to do all that, navigate all that? Well, ultimately, we decided just to take Jim's car. So I drove his car that day to clean it out, clean it up, get it washed because, again, this is me. I like to do road trips in cars that are clean. It's just like when I'm cooking in my kitchen, I like to have my kitchen clean before I start cooking. For some reason, it's overwhelming to my brain, my personality, if I try to go bake a cake, but there's stuff all over the place or dishes or, I just can't do that. It's overload on my brain. And so I wanted to have the car clean. So I did that, which was something unexpected. That was an extra 45 minutes of my day where I'm going to go clean the car, get it ready and all of that. It really probably needed an oil change also, but we didn't look into that. I did have a few things, like I replaced the wipers for Jim and made sure there was wiper fluid. I did those little bitty things and checked the battery, that sort of thing. But other than that, nothing. And we were just set to go. I love driving his car. It's a wonderful car. And I was trying to drive so that he could just sit back and relax and we could do our things. Well, those are things that happened before. So here we go the morning of. And Jim already knows that I am like a chop, 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 chop person. And sometimes he resists that or it's chafing to him. And I'm learning to be a little bit more controlled about my attitude and to be a little more flexible. Let's just put it that way. I want to be a person who is go with the flow, kind of flexible. Okay, this happens. And this is our theme. Is it a tragedy or is it an inconvenience? Okay, we're inconvenienced. Let me be Christ-like while I'm being inconvenienced. Can I do that? Can I muster up that? Do I have that wisdom? Do I have that self-control, that sound mind, that discipline, which was my word for the year? Sound mind, discipline, self-control. And I've really been practicing hard with that in mind, just about doing everything. So God will give you plenty of instances to try to, if you want transformation, he's going to give you plenty of instances where you can learn to practice that. And you're going to fail, you're going to flop, you're going to fall down, you're going to get back up, you're going to say, Lord, help me again, Lord, here we go again. And you're going to keep trying, just like I do. Okay, that's what Christ followers do. We're not perfect, but we long for that transformation, don't we? And we desire that so much, and we know that God is with us in the process. We cannot strive our way to transformation. Trust me, if we could strive our way to it, I would already be there, done that, with a pretty bow on top. Perfect, okay? Doesn't work that way. So at any rate, he gets up. So I should tell you, he had a little bit of an eye infection going on. Just where you get the little, like maybe a sty or something like that. And we were putting hot compresses on. This is Jim. He also injured his back a little bit playing pickleball recently. So he's not feeling the greatest. Plus now his head's exploding, right? So, and all the while, this vacation, this little mini getaway was for rest, for peace, for alignment, right? So, oh my goodness. So he's cranky. Guess what? I get cranky because he's cranky. I'm trying to blame my crankiness on him. I'm actually cranky because things are not going the way we planned to get out the door. Okay. It was just cranky. So there was a point that morning where he goes like this. And if you're listening and not watching on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, he puts his hand up like that, as if to say, halt, like, don't even, Victoria, don't even start. So the whole while I'm just breathing and trying to slow things down. And then, okay, we get out the door. We're getting out the door. But for whatever reason, the day before it was so hot. Remember, I was trying to use my air conditioning in my car. The next day, the temperature just plummeted. I mean, they went to like freezing temperature. So we walk out and we're like, shoot, we better take our jackets. So we have 2 exterior doors in our house, and they have the glass storm doors on them. We had, of course, locked both of those because we were coming out the garage. And neither one of us carried keys to those glass doors. I don't know why. Don't even know where they are. They're new to the house since I've lived here, but I don't know where they are. I've never carried them. Those were dead bolted. Those doors were locked. We have one door to the garage that goes right into our kitchen area, and we usually keep that unlocked. And there's a keypad on the garage so that people can, we know you can enter that way, and that door will be open for anybody who needs to come in. All our kids have the codes and that sort of thing. Come anytime, right? For whatever reason, I walked out that garage door and I locked it behind me. Neither Jim nor I have a key to that garage door that enters into our kitchen. So now we realize we are completely locked out of our house. We have 2 choices. We can get into our house somehow, or we can leave without our jackets. However, we knew that when we came back, we would have the same dilemma. So I looked at Jim and I said, you're going to have to break the doorknob off of that door. Now, he was already, tensions are high, right? They're flying. So he looked at me and kind of paused and looked at me, just cocked his head a little bit way, and went over and he grabbed a mallet. I said, would you like me to go ahead over to your mom's? And because we had borrowed her car, I guess at that point, and he was going to drive it back. I said, let me just get the dogs over to her. Smokey, by the way, is still not any better, but maybe he wagged his tail twice instead of no wagging. I don't know. He was drinking, wouldn't eat, but we thought, okay, they love Nana's house. They're familiar there. He's going to be fine. If something happens, she'll just have to take him to the vet or the emergency or whatever. We kind of categorized that and just set that aside. So Jim said yes. And I backed out of the drive with Rico on my left, Smokey right here. And there he is. I'm watching my husband take this mallet and just pound and pound and pound at that doorknob. So I did ask him later if he had any satisfaction in doing that. And he said, yes, it was very satisfying in that moment to do that. So, okay. So we get over to his mom's and get the dog settled in, and I kind of vent a little bit. I'm starting to laugh a little bit. I'm like, it's all okay. We're like 3 hours, 2 hours leaving later than normal, but it's okay. We can do this. Everything's going to be fine. And then Jim came and we were kind of jovial about it. And we started laughing a little bit more. So I thought, okay, this is going to be fine. Next issue, we get in the car, ready to go on. And this is a surprise trip, right? So I had in my phone the complete itinerary for driving. I had 2 stops for us on the way that were supposed to be, they're kind of on the way, not much out of the way. And they were supposed to be fun for us and nice and fun to do. One was a hiking trip at Cumberland resort area, and we were going to go see the falls and then see another falls, and just it was a cooler day, but it was sunny, and so we knew that would be something fun, and we love to hike. So I added that on, and then I had a lunch planned for us, and we're going to kind of be able to make it, but first we had to get breakfast. And so we were going to go eat, just grab something quick. And so I was trying to put into my phone the itinerary, couldn't get it up. And you were just sitting there waiting for me to get it up. And I didn't want to show Jim or have him help, because then he would see the places. And so finally I just got to work around on that. We got our lunch. And then the next thing is when we travel a lot, we listen to songs and music. We listen to our favorite marriage podcast. Focus on the Family has wonderful marriage podcasts, and we love those episodes. They're so funny, they're engaging, they're real and relatable, and that's probably why I love them, right? Because they tell real stories of their struggles, and it's just so relatable and bare boned and encouraging at the same time, and puts God in the middle of everything. So I was looking forward to listening to those. I thought, that'll be the best thing for us to listen to right now. And he knows that about me, and he may not have known that's what I was expecting. So I see him on his phone, and of course I think that's what he's going to do. He's going to put on our favorite marriage podcast. Guess what came on instead? What came on instead was C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity. I love C.S. Lewis. I love Mere Christianity. But it wasn't an audiobook that I was expecting to listen to at that time when my head was just heavy. And if you listen to C.S. Lewis, yes, we love him, and he writes amazingly. He takes all these theoretical concepts and these religious themes, and he breaks them down into a way that even somebody like I can understand them. Just clear and simple. But you still have to think. And I'm like, do we have to listen to Mere Christianity right now? I don't have the bandwidth for that. I just want something lighthearted and engaging. And he's like, so I'm like, okay, fine. We'll just listen to Mere Christianity. It was delightful. It was wonderful. We just barely got through the preface, right? And then we went into book 1, or I don't know which we made it through. And so finally we got to the place where we were going. And then it occurred to me on the way that as remarried couples, you can relate if you've ever lost a husband to death and remarried, or if you've been divorced and you remarried, there's always that other person, right? And that's been a real struggle for me at times in our marriage. It's always like thinking, looking at, wondering memories of that other person. And when they crop up, and is Jim thinking about that or this or that? And he doesn't seem to think about that stuff, probably not nearly as much as I might. But on the way, it occurred to me, maybe he's been here with another significant person in his life before. Guess what? He had. And that just about threw me for a loop. And I'm like, great, let's not even go. I mean, I can go to all or nothing thinking so quickly, but we also have this little mantra or this little thing that we say, it's a pillar of salt. we don't want to look back. And I would encourage you not to look back in your life either. So just remember Lot's wife, and it's not helpful to look back. Yes, we can learn lessons. Yes, God can refine us through our past mistakes. I'm not saying that these were mistakes, but God can help us through, anything we've done really in our past. We don't have to be so guarded with regret and shame and just so, encompassed or focused on those sorts of things or our failures. And that's not what God wants for us. I know that, but sometimes I can go there very quickly. So we just say, hey, pillar of salt, pillar of salt. Victoria, do you want to go there? Do you really want to rehearse that? Do you really want to go there? And he's very good at that. I'm not don't do as well with that. But so that was a pillar of salt moment. It just took me a while to think, okay, no, I don't want to go there. Pillar of salt. Okay, so we absolutely loved that hike, though. We got there. It was just glorious. I loved every second of it. And I will say that was one of the most peaceful moments on this trip, I think, for me. I lay on what we made it to this particular falls, and I lay on this big rock where we had navigated to a big rock where nobody else was, this big area. I navigated over there, and I just I took my jacket off, put it under my head, and I just lay there for I don't know how long. It was so soft. It was so peaceful. It was so wonderful. And tears just streamed down my eyes as I was thinking about just those issues in my life, my dad, my family, my friend relationship, where where I'm grieving the shifts that are going on there, the blessedness of my life. That's overwhelming to me sometimes too. It's not always just the hardships that I face. It's also how I feel so blessed and privileged in this life. And I was just thanking God for so many things. And the waterfall was just roaring. It was just like so loud and coming down. And I thought, it reminded me of my favorite Bible verse. One of them is deep calls to deep, and the crashing of your waves, the waterfalls just fall over me. And I love that because it's a reminder to me that that we go through hard things. We go through deep things, deep issues in our souls. But God is there too. Deep calls to deep. It is those moments sometimes when we're just at our wretched rock bottom that God is still there. There's no place. I wish my voice didn't get like this when I get emotional. And I forgot to bring my water up here, but there is no place that you can go, no height or depth that you can go that God isn't. And that's what I was feeling at that moment. I was just thinking, deep calls to deep. God, you're with me through all of this. You go with me through the fire and the flood. And I was thanking him for that. So that was wonderful. And then we got back on the road after a leisurely time. It was only maybe a round trip. I don't know, maybe a 3-mile walk, something like that. We get back in and then we go to lunch, and the lunch was a bit underwhelming. It was like Colonel Sanders' place, like Sanders Cafe, but it was the first place where Kentucky Fried Chicken was like, quote, invented or discovered, or that recipe. That was the Colonel Sanders' first place. And it was just an iconic little place. Did they have grilled chicken? No, that was one mark against them because I wanted to get grilled chicken because I try to make healthy choices instead of some of the fried stuff. And it's not like Jim even loves fried chicken. It was more just where it was. And so anyway, we went there. It was actually quite pleasant. I was able to take all the fried stuff off my chicken, and I had some green beans and coleslaw. Maybe not the healthiest, but it was absolutely delicious, and it was a fun time. So now we're getting back in our normal selves, and we listened to a couple of marriage podcasts at this point as we continue trucking down the road. And we were, I guess, maybe trying to think if I think we were south. No, we may have been east of Knoxville, Tennessee at this point, or coming upon it. I don't know if we were before or behind it. And we were playing this word game, just silly stuff that I do that my poor husband tolerates. Like I'll say, okay, the or game, like peanuts or cashews, that kind of thing. And then he says cashews, and then he gives me one, or we explain them. It's just something silly that I was doing at that time. And so I'm still driving, trying to let him relax and rest, but go through this game with me. And I'm driving, and I'm probably going, I know I was going over the speed limit. Is that okay to tell you? I speed. I don't like excessively speed, but I speed. At times in my life, I felt convicted of that, and other times not so convicted. So I don't know where to put the whole speeding thing. It is disobedient to the laws that we have. There it is. I was speeding, and all of a sudden, as I'm driving, we're on Interstate 75 South, 3 lanes, right, of traffic, and I'm in the furthest lane over to the left, the speeding lane, the passing lane, and we hear a huge explosion. And the right tire, passenger tire, blows out on our car, on Jim's car. And I'm like driving, and I'm like, what was that? And I'm like, I think we blew a tire. And so now I could kind of feel it. I knew not to brake quickly. I took my foot off the accelerator. Apparently, if you brake quickly, you can spin, you can cause all kind of a ruckus as I'm going so fast. Thank you, Lord, for watching over us. And of course, those cars are zooming by, and I was coming around. It was like a big hill, very hilly, coming around a curve, kind of like thing, and down a hill. And I slowly started braking, making my way over to the side area there. What's that called? The area, I can't think of what it's called, but over there to that area off the interstate. And we make it over, and then I'm just like breathing, holding the wheel, like thinking, okay, we just made it through a blowout. We just had a blowout. I would tell you that it was Friday the 13th, but we are not superstitious. But it was a kind of true to its superstition. Anyway, there's that. We made it over, and we have to take everything out of the back, because to get the donut. And Jim was like, I think my jack is back there. We had not really prepared. We weren't taking his car originally. We were taking my car. So we got everything out, everything unloaded that was stuffed in there, got the donut out, and we couldn't find the jack. Finally, Jim has like these cases for emergencies back there, and they're all nicely stocked and all of that. But I think maybe at one point he had taken the jack out. Something happened there, or we found the jack in the bottom. But what we couldn't find is that little crossbar thing for the lug nuts to remove them. And he looked everywhere. We took everything, just like, throwing everything out, everything along the side of 75 with cars and trucks, semis just whizzing by us so fast. And it pulled over as much. Thank goodness it was that side of the car, right? Can you imagine? And the whole time I'm like, Jim gets on the phone. He's like, we need roadside assistance. We need someone to come tow us. We need, it's getting later into the day. We were near a city, like 30 minutes from one city, I think. But then there was another place, like a Walmart. The guy on the phone, he said, if you can just get to a Walmart, they probably have a tire for you. And that was the closest place that sold tires, where we actually were GPS wise. So I was the whole time, I'm like, dang, all we need is the lug nut thing. And then Jim can do it. We don't have to have hours upon hours for people waiting to get on this spot where we are on the interstate. And so I was like, please. And I was just looking at, it was all I could do to stop waving, because I almost started waving. But the way we were, it was around a curve, and people were flying around the curve and then down the hill. And even if I did this, I'm like, will I cause an accident or something? Because there was not a lot of time for people to stop. And so I just kept praying, Lord, please send someone. Please send someone. He sent me someone before, when I was by myself and needed help on the road. And so I was just praying, Lord, please, please, please send someone, send someone, send someone. Let me see the blinker, Lord. Let me see the blinker. Please, Lord, please, Lord, please, Lord. And I never saw a blinker, but all of a sudden someone had passed us, pulled over, because it took him a while to pull over, and then backed up on the edge of the road where we were. And he came up, he said, y'all need some help? And I was like, oh, thank you, Lord. So that guy had the tool we needed to get the lug nuts off. He helped Jim, and he got the tire changed. We got on our merry way to the Walmart, the closest Walmart. They had one tire that size in their stock in store. And we're like, we'll take it. The guy even said, it's on rollback, as if we cared. We would have paid anything for it, right? And so they got us in, got us out, and then we headed all the way over. We still had, I think, 2 hours plus to go, 2.5 hours to go to get to our destination. We went to Lake Junaluska in North Carolina. It was beautiful, nice place. We got there, it was dark. Of course, I had plans for us that afternoon to walk the lake, to acclimate, to go to the coffee shops and just have a relaxing afternoon. That's really not the way it turned out. I will also tell you there was a point earlier where I'm not going to tell you that story because that goes with when Jim was grumpy, and he came out of the bathroom when we had to stop, and it looked like there was toilet paper on his foot, and I thought it was hysterical. He was so upset I was laughing. Anyway, so that was one whole thing. But we worked past that one really quickly, and finally made it to the destination. It was beautiful pulling in there because the lights from all the surrounding homes and establishments that were near the lake were just beautifully lit. So we made it in. We got up to our room, and I think we went back out to eat dinner that night. And so that was our day, getting away on a vacation where we were supposed to rest, where we were supposed to find peace. And it just didn't meet our expectations. I can tell you that. But the whole time, Jim and I were asking ourselves, is this an inconvenience or is this a tragedy? And we look back over every single thing, every little domino that could fall and cause another one to fall, or, we look back on every single event that day. And ultimately that night, we were praising God for his goodness and his safety and the provision that he had for us. He said, thank you, Lord, for this day that you've given us, despite the hiccups along the way. Not one of them was a tragedy. I can think of so many other tragedies, so many others, but they were not tragedies. They were just inconveniences, things that stopped us in our day, that interrupted our day. And I said, Jim, these are really divine interruptions. We have no idea what God may have been preventing down the way. We even thought, should we not have come? I mean, there were so many things that we thought maybe we were forcing a vacay and shouldn't have, though it had been planned a few weeks earlier. We still thought maybe God doesn't want us on this trip. But that wasn't true, of course. And so I want to just conclude. We enjoyed our Saturday. We did the 4-mile hike. It was a glorious sunny day, still a little cool, but I think I had a t-shirt on at that point because we warmed up. We had coffee at a beautiful coffee shop. It was Jim's birthday. He had ice cream. It was wonderful. We made it home a little earlier than we just were kind of ready to get back home. And we had a birthday celebration for Jim that evening. And so we wanted to get back and make sure we were ready for that. But it was overall lovely and wonderful to be away. Although we were exhausted when we got back, Jim even took off another day of work just to try to breathe and get back. He had to put that new doorknob back on right and get us situated in our house and just go get the dogs. They were better. Smokey's fine. He was wagging his tail like crazy when I finally got to see them on Sunday. So our evening was lovely. It was nice, though I did eat too much cake. I overindulged in cake. Didn't like that, but otherwise, it was what it was. But let me just share a little bit about, is this a tragedy or just an inconvenience, and why your brain and your faith need you to know the difference between the two, because your mind can escalate so quickly, just like ours did. A delayed flight becomes a ruined trip. Have you ever done that? Like, oh, the whole thing's ruined. That catastrophic, all or nothing, black and white thinking. Or maybe you don't get a good night's rest one night and you think, oh, I just can't function. Maybe a hard conversation that you have with a friend becomes to a conclusion, this relationship is just falling apart. But what if I told you, as I've tried to tell you, that your brain is wired to blur that line between tragedy and inconvenience, and your peace depends on learning to completely separate the two. And that is ultimately how Jim and I enjoyed our trip, because we referenced it by, is this a tragedy? Or in looking back, I had to ask myself, was all this a tragedy? Tragedy would be true loss, like grief or life-altering events, but an inconvenience is something that brings you discomfort, it disrupts things, or you have unmet expectations. And most of what dysregulates us daily is what? It's the inconveniences. They're not tragedies. It's miscategorized inconvenience. So your brain's job is survival, not peace. And the amygdala, it's going to scan constantly for any kind of threat. And it does not do a good job in distinguishing between emotional discomfort and actual danger. So when your plans unravel on your vacation or in your day, your brain reacts as if something really is wrong, not just annoying, but wrong. And that's going to trigger the cortisol, that stress hormone. Narrowed thinking, it narrows your thinking. You're going to have emotional reactivity that way. And you move from this is frustrating to this is terrible very quickly. This really is called that cognitive distortion that I mentioned, called catastrophizing or emotional reasoning. And here's the key: your brain will always over-label inconvenience as threat unless you retrain it. Scripture consistently calls us to discern reality rightly. Romans 12:2 says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. One of my favorite verses, my ministry verse. And this is cognitive restructuring, basically, before neuroscience even named it. Philippians 4:8 goes even further, telling us exactly what to think about. Whatever's true, think about that. Not what feels true, not what your stress response is shouting, but what is actually true. And then 2 Corinthians 10:5, another one of my favorite verses, says, take every thought captive. This is active mental discipline that you and I can practice. We can retrain our brains to do this. We label our thoughts. We challenge those distortions. We choose alignment with God's truth instead. Here's the deeper issue. You cannot enter rest if your brain is constantly signaling danger, even on vacation, even in a quiet room, even when nothing is truly wrong. Rest is not just those external conditions. It is internal interpretation. That's what I learned. That's what I had to practice on this vacation. So ask yourself in the moment, is this a tragedy or is this an inconvenience? What is actually true right now? What story am I adding to this? And then reframe it instead of, oh, everything is going wrong. It's Alexander and the horrible everyday good day. No, every day's a bad day. No good day, whatever that title was. You can shift that to, this is inconvenient, but I'm okay. Looking back on that trip, nothing that happened was truly tragic, but in the moment, my brain treated it as if it were, and that stole my rest and my joy. So your peace is not as fragile as it may feel, but your thoughts are going to make it feel that way or seem that way. You don't need perfect circumstances to rest. You need a renewed mind that can tell the difference between what is hard and what is harmful. What is hard and what is harmful. Is this an inconvenience? Is this a tragedy? God is not asking you to deny difficulty in your life. He never would do that. He's just inviting you to see it clearly. So let me pray us out of this. Father in heaven, I thank you so much for this day. I thank you that you have a will for each of us, and may your will be done in our lives. Father, help us to reframe those moments of anxiety and stress and pressure when we feel like our world is falling apart. Help us to remember that often it's just a hardship. It's just an inconvenience. Help us to shift our mental mindset to one that is able to reframe that into, Lord, this may be hard. It's a challenge for me, but I'm going to be okay. It's not the end of the world. Change our thinking for us. Be a part of that transformational process. We need you involved every single step of the way. Help us to take our thoughts captive. Help us to think about what is true. Help us to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. You are at the helm of our ship, Lord. We love you, and may you and you alone always and in every situation be glorified. We love you, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for letting me share what's going on in my life. looking forward, coming up, we're going to do a 3-part series on codependency and what that means. And it probably doesn't mean what you think it means. I know I've had to learn a lot about codependency because it's something that I have really, really struggled with. And it may just blow your mind what we're going to learn together about codependency and what God has to say about all that. So I hope you join me for the upcoming series. Remember that there's so many links in the show notes, the YouTube description that you can click on. You can go to my website. There are all kind of resources and freebies there. You can get on my subscription list where I just chat with people a couple times a month and just send them little email saying, hey, here's what's going on. I also have a special group of gals who are joining me as I write the Sacred Thinking devotional. I'm so excited about that. I want you to be a part of that little group of insider secret group, I call them, where I'm even dripping out a few excerpts from the devotional as I go. I ask for prayer. I say, oh, here's what's going on. I also love it when you email me and say, hey, this is what's going on in my life. These are thoughts that I struggle with. This is where I am. Because I'm putting that in the devotional. I won't use your name or anything, but I'm actually including that in the devotional because I know it meets you where you are. You are the ladies, the gals, the people, the Christ followers, the daughters of the King who have feet on the ground, and you're struggling with your thoughts. I know that, just like I do. And so those are real life examples that are going to all be in the devotional. And I'm so excited about that project. It is just filling me with such joy and energy. I'm having a good time writing it, though I can struggle at times, and I just, kind of, it can be wrenching at times because it's writing and it's a gift that I have, but that doesn't mean it's easy to do it all the time. So I'm working my way through that. If you're in that insider group, I'll share with you some of the behind the scenes things that are going on as I continue to pen that devotional and work through it. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you hear, if you're encouraged, maybe share it with a friend and just say, hey, here's another gal over here. She's keeping it real. Her name's Victoria, and she does this podcast all about your thoughts and your emotions, your mindsets, and all from a biblical Christian worldview. And maybe you want to take a listen. So encourage someone else with what I'm hoping is also encouraging you. I do love you and I appreciate you. And thank you so much for tuning in. God bless you. I'll catch you next week.